Hey friends, it's Charles here, and this is a different type of video. I have the opportunity to talk about and review a brand new product in the nerd sphere, and more specifically, a wrestling show. Let's start with I am not a juggalo. I have nothing against the Insane Clown Posse. I think they make pretty good music and they have a huge following. I've just never really been really into their music, but their history in wrestling goes back to the 90s. Um, JCW Juggalo Championship Wrestling has been a staple of professional wrestling for a quarter of a century. And they've had ups and downs. And I've viewed shows of theirs before, and a lot of times it was very hard to watch. It was very chaotic, and just the quality the actual filming was not there. They've always attracted great talent, everything from legends to up and comers that are now, all stars. And so today, I was scrolling through my Instagram, and one of the wrestlers I follow, one of my favorite female wrestlers, Dani posted about a brand new show, Juggalo Championship Wrestling Lunacy. It is for free on their Psychopathic Records YouTube channel. So it being for free, I had nothing to lose. Around 50 minutes of wrestling for free. And we got 3 matches. And I'll get into some details, but I will say from the start, I really enjoyed it. Um, they did a lot of things great that, a lot of the smaller companies just don't do. For one, it was shot very well. It looked good. There were no awkward angles, no missed moves. Um, Everything was well lit. Um, yeah, there were no shaky cameras. You really got to get, at times when you had those emotional moments in a match, they would zoom in to catch the expression on the face of the wrestler at the right times. And so they did that very good. And another pet peeve of mine, especially if I know a show was pre-taped, I know that nobody's perfect and there will be mistakes in wrestling. But if you're pre-taping something, edit out your mistakes. If a guy slips, if they miss a move, you don't need that in there. It does nothing. We all know what wrestling is. And so to say that it will affect suspension of disbelief is foolishness. So if you can make your wrestlers look better with editing, do it, and they did. There were a couple of points where, there was a skip ahead in action, but it didn't mess with the flow of the story or the match. So I dug it. I thought it was very cool. And another mistake a lot of smaller companies make is they try to look like the big guys, like WWE, AEW, Juggalo Championship Wrestling. While this show is more outsider friendly, if you're not a juggalo, you're not going to feel left out or that you're not being entertained. It retains that genuine juggalo insane clown posse atmosphere. You have a crowd full of people in full juggalo gear chanting, their vulgar chants and they're doing their thing. And it's more of a smaller ballroom, but it is packed to the brim with people who are excited to be there. Not with people who want to go and be cynical and judge something, but people that really want to be there, and it made everything feel that much more epic. Let's start with the people that we saw on the show today. Some of them I was very familiar with, some I was not, but you're going to get that with any company. The first match we had Alice Crowley versus Dani. Alice Crowley, she's a up and comer on the independent scene. I believe she's in her early 20s and really making a name for herself. She's appeared on AEW a few times. Dani, she's worked WWE, AEW, and she's actually did some stunt work for some of Darby Allin's vignettes in AEW. If you remember the big Pittsburgh vignette with all the motorcycle riders, she was one of the main motorcycle riders that you see in that vignette. And so that was in our first match. The second match was a tag team called the Brothers of Funstruction. They were the home team. They've been tag team champions for over 2 years. I'm not familiar with them, but they were, fully Juggalo. They were the home team. I'm sure I'll get to know them more as the show goes on. But yeah, they were dressed as clowns, and they were both good workers. They were actual brothers. Not the most imposing guys, but they were very good wrestlers. And they wrestled Caleb Connolly, who has done a lot in Impact Wrestling. If you're familiar with the character Suicide from Impact Wrestling, you know it's been played by many people, Caleb Connolly being one of them. And I believe they mentioned he held the X Division Championship. And as Caleb Connolly, I don't remember him holding gold, but I believe he may have been one of the X Division champions that won it, portraying Suicide. Because that character switched between T.J. Perkins, Caleb Connolly, Frankie Kazarian, um, Christopher Daniels, and I think a few other wrestlers. And so it was a tag team with him and Facade, who is a veteran of independent wrestling, been all over the place, tremendous high flyers. And they were against the Brothers of Funstruction, the Juggalos. And that was a good match. It was well worked. And then in the main event, we had um, the Southern Six. Their leader was Kerry Morton. He's Ricky Morton's son. Ricky Morton being from the Rock and Roll Express, a young up and comer on the independent scene. And the guys he were teaming with, I was not familiar with them, but apparently one of them was the NWA US champion. Big guys, look like wrestlers, no complaints. They had a promo segment with Shaggy Two Dope that was really introducing them to the crowd. And then they were facing in the main event. You had Willie Mack, who is the JCW champion, and he was teaming with. Let me check my notes here. Willie Mack, yeah, he was teaming with Matt Cross, another veteran of the independent scene. You may remember him from Lucha Underground. He was the biker guy with the, just normal black mask. Great high flyer. I think he could have been a big name if he was a little bit taller. But, in my eyes, the guy's an independent wrestling legend. And they were teaming with Santana Jackson, who is a very good wrestler / Michael Jackson impersonator. The guy is a mean machine. Even if you're not a wrestling fan, you have seen him on your Instagram feed grabbing a DDT, moonwalking, and hitting, dropping their opponents on their heads. And so, we had some name value there. Now, the first thing that I will say is that no, they didn't have a bunch of quote unquote big names, but the guys on top of the card are well known, well respected guys on the independent circuit who also happen to work for other companies like AEW, who have worked for Lucha Underground, and who work all around the world. And so they may not have had a big name, but they had very talented wrestlers. And to me, that's the most important thing. And the show was short, 50 minutes, I think 47 minutes to be precise. And it was all action packed. So let's give you the rundown of what happened. It started off with an in ring kind of actually started off with Willie Mack getting out of the limousine, greeting his fans, being the man of the people. While he's not a juggalo, he's been wrestling for those crowds. And you can tell he's, the people's champion. He gets out in front of the arena, he greets everybody, shakes hands, cuts to the opening titles. And the first thing you see in ring is Violent J, one of the the owners of the company. Member of the Insane Clown Posse. He cuts a promo, and I will say the promo was passionate, but it came off bitter. It was a lot of, we're the small guys, we're overlooked, calling out Dave Military Wrestling Observer specifically. Um, and I think what he was trying to do, I think what he did successfully, is build an us against them narrative, which, seems to be, one of the driving forces behind the Juggalo movement. And so he succeeded in speaking to his audience and then letting new people know, hey, we've been here, we've been doing this. You just haven't seen us on your TVs. And like I said, I think a lot of that was due to production quality. And, a lot of the stuff being so far out of the mainstream as far as violence and chaos. One thing you notice right off from the start is, like I said, it looks great. Everything high definition, well put together, interesting moving camera shots. Really, you could tell that was going to be, the production quality isn't what's going to hold them back. So kudos to you guys for that. Um, and then we get to our first match, Alice Crowley versus Dani Mo. And I think the first match of a company sets the tone and tells you what you can expect. And I was expecting, knowing Dani Mo, who was a high flyer, I was expecting a night full of flippy, spot bestie chaos in the ring. And this was a very by the book, wrestling match. No frills, no bullshit. The commentary was vulgar without crossing the line for most of it. But, when you buy into that brand, you're going to want some edginess. And they did walk that line of being, using obscenity, yet still calling the matches and being respectful for the most part of the people in the matches. She won with a very cool looking rope walk crossbody. Um, they mentioned that there's no women's championship in JCW, and I'm thinking this may be something to set up a future women's championship, because if you're going to mention it, it's going to be perceived as a weakness. Why bring it up? So I think we have that to look forward to. The next match was the Brothers of Funstruction versus Caleb Connolly and Facade. It was an okay match. It wasn't my thing. Pardon me, I'm taking a sip here. It wasn't my thing necessarily, but I got some enjoyment out of it. The story seemed to be that, Facade, he was in with the Juggalos, in with the fun stuff. There was a lot of shenanigans to start the match. It was one of the clowns and Caleb Connolly starting the match, and it literally started with a cock joke. One of the brothers of Funstruction made a rubber chicken appear out of nowhere and was, kind of jabbing at Caleb with that. And the commentators made sure to know that it was a cock joke, so to speak. So, yeah, sort of with clown shenanigans. And then, so when you think we're going to get ready for business, he makes something else appear, a smaller cock. So, another cock joke. A little bit juvenile, but not over the top. They quickly got into the wrestling. The story of this match was Facade was the good guy, not a juggalo, but kind of embraced by the crowd, embraces the fun. And Caleb Connolly, his tag partner, was the spoiled sport. And so you had that dynamic of Facade wanting to get in with the guys, have fun, put on a sporting wrestling match. Caleb Connolly wanting to cut corners, cheat. Eventually, it got to the point where Facade was frustrated, turned his back on Caleb Connolly, who lost to a very cool looking move. It was an elevated. One of the clowns held him up, almost like a backbreaker position, and the other clown did a top rope double stomp. Looked very cool finishing move. Not my tea, but the match made sense. Solid match psychology. And then, yeah, we had an appearance out of nowhere of a ring girl. Kind of a gothic, juggalo looking ring girl. Seemed like an odd placement because there weren't ring girls between any other matches. But, I mean, you got to fill the time somewhere, I guess. And then you had Shaggy Spotlight, where Shaggy 2 Dope introduces you to a tag team, and they focused on the Southern Six, Kerry, Morton, and the other two guys. I thought that was cool for guys who aren't familiar with the product, like myself. And so let's get to that match. It's Southern Six versus Willie Mack, um, Matt Cross, and Santana Jackson. Um, and first thing I noticed is the entrances are cool. When Santana Jackson came out, he came out to what I'm assuming is an unlicensed Beat It intro, but there's something with you can get around the copyrights if it's being played organically in the background of a video, not pumped through the mix, then you can skirt the licensing rules. And it was clearly being played over the sound system. So I think that's how they got around that. But as he was coming to the ring, one of the commentators made a hide your kids joke. It's like, okay, is this guy, you're going to have this parody comedy wrestler about a real guy. Why you want to bring up that dark part of Michael Jackson's story? Seemed kind of like a low blow, a cheap joke, in my opinion, that if you're trying to appeal to a mainstream audience, it kind of like, kind of made me recoil a little bit, but you recovered pretty quickly with the match quality. I was very impressed with the Southern Six. Kerry Morton is an incredible bad guy. When you look at his father, who was, from what I've seen of him, almost a career babyface, barring sometime in WCW, Kerry Morton has it. He is incredibly unlikable, and the match was good. There were no noticeable mistakes by the guys that I didn't recognize. All quality workers. Some fun, flippy, athletic stuff from Willie Mack and Matt Cross. In the end of the match, Santana Jackson took the loss. He lost to kind of a spinning black hole slam that they called, what was it? The Thrill Ride. It was a good match. There were a few cuts where you could tell they edited something out, a mistake, which is a good thing. I also noticed that the rules in tag team matches, I don't know if it's a thing of where the rules are loose or if they're just saying, fuck it, we missed that spot, let's keep moving. But there were times when tag rules were just not paid attention to. Caleb Conley in the earlier match took a pinfall when he wasn't legal man. Santana Jackson tagged in Matt Cross and Willie Mack at the same time, and that was okay for some reason. They are very loose with the rules, um, and the atmosphere was, like I said, from the first match through the last, electric. And you had juggalos being juggalos. They were throwing cups at the bad guys and shouting obscenities, but it wasn't something that was dangerous or disrespectful. It was just kind of that wild, rowdy atmosphere, but it wasn't enough to turn off a new viewer, in my opinion. I still felt like it was something I enjoyed. And then, as the bad guys were in the ring celebrating, you see a man appear at the top of the ramp, James Storm, who is best known for his time in Impact Wrestling, NWA. He did a match or two in NXT, but a legend as far as TNA wrestling goes and indie wrestling. The biggest name on the card by far. He came out to confront and run off the Southern Six. Which is cool. Something to uh, something familiar to fans like myself who don't necessarily follow Juggalo Championship Wrestling. Overall, it was better than I expected. I enjoyed it more than I would say. I've enjoyed it more than even episodes of Impact I've recently watched, and I enjoy Impact Wrestling. Um, there were a few things that I noticed right off. Like I said, it looked great, it was shot great, and one of my pet peeves when you get these smaller shows is you have wrestlers that don't look like wrestlers. And I'm not talking about being perfectly in shape, but as a musician, and like I am, a good rule of thumb is you do not want to look like your audience. I mean, why else would they come out to see you? Even if you're not going to dress fancy, you want to have some standard based on where you're playing, what music you're playing. If you're showing up to a $500 a man gig at a ballroom, and you show up in a t-shirt and jeans to play jazz, that's not a good look. And every wrestler in this, their gear was made great. They looked great. They were tanned. They were pumped. It looked like a quality professional wrestling show that you would see on TV as far as the way that the wrestlers looked. Which is, in the past, you would see, I've seen guys show up in, tattered jerseys and jorts, which, unless you're John Cena, it's not going to work for you. It was an enjoyable 48 minutes. I highly suggest you check out Juggalo Championship Wrestling Lunacy. It looks like it's going to drop every Wednesday. So, yeah, on the Psychopathic Records YouTube channel, I give it, a solid 4 out of 5. There was a lot of foolishness, but no more than you'll see in WWE and AEW. And that's just my nitpick. The great thing about wrestling is that, a good show will have something for everybody. And for me, that first match is a straight up no frills, no bullshit wrestling match. That was great, in my opinion. And for guys like the sports entertaining stuff, clowns, that was good stuff. You had a lot of familiar wrestling tropes, the odd couple tag team in there. And then the main event, you got to see your champion, you got to see your big names, you got to see guys who they're building, and you got a nice surprise at the end. And so I give JCW Lunacy 4 out of 5. Check it out and stay tuned for more action figure and comic book content. I will see you guys next time.